Hello, my dear friends. I hope you're all having a wonderful day out there. I am just recording a quick little intro for this episode because, as we like to do sometimes, we shake it up a little bit. Hope the noise isn't too bad here. I'm in Botanic Gardens in beautiful Buenos Aires, Argentina. It's a little bit close to the city noise, but hopefully it's not too bad. So, I like to keep it pretty evergreen on the show. I like to have episodes that I know people will be able to listen to years or decades down the line, still get total value out of it. But there are a couple of little storylines that have been going on behind the scenes that we like to follow. And for those of you who've been listening since the beginning, I recommend going back and listening to episode 1 if you haven't. That is the episode where me and my good friend Peruvian Bull talk about this intersection that we foresee between GameStop and Bitcoin. Both of us were really involved in the whole GME fiasco back in early 2021, and we're both rabid Bitcoiners. So we've just seen such a huge opportunity for these two loves to combine. And we had our first update in a while, just in the last week and a half. I think it was about 7-8 days ago. At long last, after years of praying to the heavens for exactly this, Ryan Cohen, the Gamestop CEO, posted a picture on Twitter with the most bullish Bitcoin maniac possibly on the planet, MICHAEL Saylor, the executive chairman at Strategy, formerly known as MicroStrategy, which is currently the far and away number one corporate Bitcoin holder on earth with a whopping 444,262 Bitcoin. So the big question is, what were these guys doing together? Did they talk about this? Were they talking? Well, I mean, of course they were talking about Bitcoin because that's all MICHAEL Saylor ever talks about. So has Ryan Cohen been orange pilled is the question. MICHAEL Saylor also followed him on Twitter. So speculation abound, and I've certainly been all over the Twitter spaces talking about this with friends, posting on Reddit, whatnot, because that's what we've been waiting for. I've been banging the door down for 3+ years on Twitter to get Ryan Cohen in on this. I know he's so primed for it, and it's time to make it happen. They have $4.6 billion in cash on hand at GameStop, and it's just a match made in heaven. So I've had a bunch of Bitcoin friends reach out to do podcasts on this whole update we have with Saylor and Ryan Cohen appearing together. And I've done a few of them, but I had to include at least one on this show here. Probably just one. I don't need to spam you guys too hard, but need to, for historical purposes, if nothing else, maybe a little bit of bragging rights to have it on here since we've been screaming from the rooftops for this for so long. It looks like things are starting to finally come together. So without further ado, here is my very fun rip with the boys over at SureSats on the Bitcoin Beat. Enjoy, friends.
On this episode of the Bitcoin Beat, we've got a guest session. We brought on Ben Wehrman to talk about the possibility of GameStop adopting a Bitcoin strategy. Ben has been beating the drum of GameStop adopting a Bitcoin strategy relentlessly. This only came on our radar recently after Ryan Cohen posted a picture with MICHAEL Saylor, so we thought Ben would be a great guest to have on and talk through this possibility. We get into it, and Ben lays out the bullish case for GameStop. You can check out Ben's content on his X at Ben Wehrman and his website, benwehrman.com. We hope you enjoy this episode. Check us out on X at SureSats and on our website, suresats.com. All right, so we got episode, I think 23 are we at now of the Bitcoin Beat here.
Sounds about right to me.
We're doing a guest session with Ben Wehrman. He's got his own podcast, Ben Wehrman Podcast. We're going to talk a little bit today about GameStop, possibly GameStop taking on a Bitcoin strategy, kind of like MicroStrategy did. I think kind of the reason I saw this is really just because there was that picture that Ryan Cohen posted with MICHAEL Saylor. So then it's like, oh, okay. Maybe he's thinking about it. When I saw that, I never really went down the whole GameStop rabbit hole, but I see that and I'm like, I really feel like this is literally the only path forward for GameStop. So Ben, I think you're a lot more versed kind of on GameStop. If you want to tell us how you kind of came into GameStop, how you came into Bitcoin, and then we can kind of go from there and talk about the feasibility of all this kind of happening.
Yeah, man. Well, thank you both so much for having me. I really appreciate it. It's always fun to talk to Bitcoiners about this weird GameStop thing because most of them just think that we're completely nuts for like, why would you understanding what you do about Bitcoin, why would you waste your time with a stock? And I totally get that. And it's a great criticism. And, I understand that point of view because Bitcoin is just such a world changer. It's just such a level of its own. Like, why are you still keeping even a pinky toe in the fiat world of stocks? And I get that. And we'll talk about that. Um, but basically, just to give a little bit of background on my story going through both of those things, I would say, and I was talking to you about this before we started, which was when the GameStop, what we called sneeze in 2021, we believe it wasn't the real squeeze. So that's a spoiler
Okay.
alert. From I was very much a crypto person from around 2017 to 2020. So I was still all about the shit coins. I had a crypto blog. I was trading Bitcoin. I didn't understand it very well. And I was just like everyone else, like Pete Dunning-Kruger at the point. So because I was still in that crypto mindset, I was still sort of kind of floating around a little bit. I knew Bitcoin, like I was starting to feel in 2021 that Bitcoin was probably the best of the bunch. It's funny how it takes us years to realize that. But um, anyway, 2021 happens. I really resonate with that story. I resonated with that story largely because I was a huge Wall Street Bets fan for many years before that. I was traveling for a couple of years. I spent a year in Australia, a year in New Zealand. I was sort of off on the other side of the world. And when you do something like that so crazy as I did, which is just such a departure from my life before that, was you kind of like have these certain anchors to home and things that you kind of like get involved with to sort of like zone out a little bit because it's a very stressful time when you're like doing these crazy travel adventures, which I did solo for the first time, sort of just on a whim in 2018. And one of the things that I would do is just I would like when I was, cooking or eating my food in a hostel, I would just be looking at Wall Street Bets and just laughing and giggling at these funny posts. The funny and tragic part of this actually is that right at the end of 2020 was when I actually flew home from New Zealand, decided, okay, I'm going to go back to like a regular life now. I'm going to get a job and make money. I literally, like at the very end of 2020, I decided, okay, I'm going to be a good boy and not waste my time scrolling on Wall Street Bets. I'm going to go get a job. And that is literally the exact time, probably within days of when the Roaring Kitty made the first post about GameStop on there, it started
Oh
blowing up,
man,
where everyone started realizing, oh, this GameStop thing's going to happen. So it could not
brutal.
have been worse possible timing for me to like walk away. So several weeks later, was like maybe a month later, um, it's early 2021, like mid January. I hear my like friends from college that know nothing about Wall Street Bets telling me about GameStop, and they show me headlines, and I see Wall Street Bets. I'm like, I know Wall Street Bets. What's going on? And so, of course, I go through the the aggressive mini rabbit hole of realizing, oh man, these shorts are totally fucked. The short interest is ridiculous. They're going to have to like pay absurd amounts to these stockholders, and so most people know how the story went from there. I sold all my other stocks and I just went in all in GameStop because I knew that like if Wall Street Bets is in on this, then it was worth trying, worth looking into. And these people are actually trustworthy. Like they show this face of being a bunch of crazy idiots, but I know that deep down it's actually like really sharp people that are sort of putting that face of being an idiot on. Like it's filled with, or I haven't been on there in a while. It's kind of went to crap in the last few years, but at that point it was full of a lot of former or current real Wall Street people that were just fucking around and having fun. So they knew what they were doing, and they basically they're smart. I knew they were smart, and I knew the media was going to spin this as they're a bunch of crazy idiots that are gambling or doing whatever. So I jumped in, I YOLO'd hard. I was butthurt that, that horrible timing that I could have, got Jimmy for like a few bucks. I got it for like 100 or something. Went through that whole thing, and
Mhm.
fast forward, I guess, to man, I can't even remember when the exact day it was now, but I'm in Jimmy. I have a bunch of stock. I'm, really dialing into that community of people, and it's a very interesting community because they're very passionate, very very cool, very smart. they're really in that stock market world. They're stock people. These people aren't into Bitcoin or crypto. They never really touched it. In fact, on Wall Street bets, it was banned to even talk about Bitcoin or crypto at the time. You couldn't talk about it. So it wasn't even on those people's minds. So I had sort of put the whole crypto Bitcoin thing on the back burner for a while as I was going down this rabbit hole. But all of a sudden, GameStop starts talking about doing an NFT marketplace, and they start partnering with Ethereum coins like Immutable and all these like gaming coins. And so I start thinking, okay, at this point, I'm like 70% sure that like all these altcoins are not the way. And again, this is kind of a gradual, like every Bitcoiner journey. It's like a long, gradual journey of realizing it's all bullshit. So I was pretty far down the way, and I realized, okay, all the people in this community have never, learned anything about crypto or Bitcoin. I've been through like several years of it, so I better figure out what the truth is now, because these people are going to need some sort of signal if this starts happening. At this point, I'm pretty sure that this is not a good idea, because I'm pretty sure at this point NFTs are garbage. So I decided like to go hard on digging through all of the most hardcore Bitcoin maxi content I could, which for years up until that point, I had brushed aside and said, these people are so mean, they're so narrow-minded, they're so toxic. Oh, Safety is so mean to people. Can't he just let me have my shitcoin in peace? And I went through all their work and just realized, oh fuck, that like they're right about everything. Like it really is Bitcoin only. Okay. So I got fooled all those years. That sucks. I need to start, being the middleman of like relaying this information into the GameStop community and hopefully getting the attention of Ryan Cohen and the people in charge there that NFT marketplace is not the way. And this was 2021 to 2022 ish. So that became my thing. I pretty much, and at that point, I got a bunch of followers on Twitter, like 10 or 15,000 followers, basically just, memeing with everyone about GameStop and talking about GameStop. But I just realized I have to put my foot down here and like go against the grain and go against what the company is saying, because I think that this is not, like, going into altcoins is never the way, as we learned from Bitcoin. So put my foot down, start saying that, yeah, this is not the right way to go forward. We need to buy Bitcoin. Like, this company needs to stop with the NFTs and altcoins. They need to buy Bitcoin, put it on the balance sheet, and open a door to all these other opportunities we could use for Bitcoin. They could start accepting it for, services and products. They could, have merchandise with Bitcoin on it. They could partner with these Bitcoin gaming companies we see, like Thunder, Zebedee, those types. Yeah. Like they could integrate Bitcoin payments into like esports and make that a new part of their deal. They could, make a marketplace that isn't some, shitcoin marketplace, but a centralized marketplace like Steam, and have Lightning Bitcoin payments in it. Tons of opportunities, like so many cool things you could do with Bitcoin. I started really pushing that, and everyone just hated me for it, because I was basically saying that their god Ryan Cohen was wrong about something,
and this is in 2021, 2022. Basically, you're starting to post.
Around, I think it was late 2021 to 2022. Definitely 2022 is when it was starting to get really loud. But yeah, so like everyone unfollowed me and blocked me and got mad at me, and like all my my Reddit clout went to zero because I was saying that the company was doing bad things. It was definitely a little bit of a culty vibe at that point, where they were saying like everything that Ryan Cohen says is correct, and you're a fudster, like
That's actually my next question was. So I know you mentioned at that time they were a trustworthy source, GME. If that the Reddit group, do you still feel that they're trustworthy at this point in terms of their knowledge? Do they understand Bitcoin at this point? Because we're several years later now.
Yeah, so the whole Reddit story in itself, just the Reddit part of it, is fascinating, because there's been several migrations of what we call the apes, the GME apes. So it started with Wall Street bets, and then that got compromised. It got totally, I don't even know all the politics behind it, but they eventually made it like, they made it unallowed to even talk about GME. And a bunch of people are conspiring like, oh, like Wall Street must have bought it out or something. So to stomp out the communication. So everyone moved to a new subreddit, r/GME. And then, there was some sort of political squabble in there too. And we're moving to a new one called Super Stonk. And that is the current one that that's like the main base now for the GameStop people is r/Super Stonk. And, every time there's a move, things just sort of get mixed up. And at this point, I would say most of the high signal that I follow is just on Twitter. Most of just the smart individual people that I found on Reddit, a lot of them, have made Twitter accounts, and I just follow them. And so it's been messy. It's very interesting from a psychological perspective, like watching all of these people, thousands of people. Like I don't even know what the total number of shareholders is. I think it's over 1 million, but thousands to tens of thousands, like very active people still following this every day. And just watching how, like, from a psychological level, these people have, like, when I think that this is even more so than Bitcoin, a story of people who, like, everyone thinks is crazy, but they just refuse to not, like, to give up on it. Like, they're going to continue to go and they continue to believe in it. And yeah, does that answer your questions?
Yeah, absolutely. I guess my main thing there was, so if we're at this point now, all these years later, we may have the group might have decided that maybe the Ethereum push was not the right idea. Do they understand Bitcoin in any capacity? Do they understand that it might be something that the stock the company can use to help bolster their stock and provide shareholder value at this point?
Yeah, so I guess I didn't completely finish my story. I guess that's sort of the next part of it is, so I'm yelling into the void, telling people like NFTs are stupid, we need to buy Bitcoin, for a couple of years. And then around 2023, NFT marketplace goes poof. Like one day there was just a banner on the website that says we're writing this down, it didn't work. And so I'm like, great, now let's buy Bitcoin, right? And so then there was like another, that was in 2023, I think winter 2023 when that happened. And so for the next year, I'm saying, Bitcoin, come on, like let's take the next step. Now we know that the NFTs didn't work, let's buy Bitcoin. And so about another year, just a little over a year, because we're in February now. And then finally we see a glimmer of hope for the Bitcoin argument, which is Ryan Cohen posts a picture with Michael Saylor. And that is, what sort of kicked this whole last couple of weeks of craziness off, is a speculation of, oh man, this is good. This is Ryan Cohen is learning. He's figured out that the shitcoins were bad. Now he's hanging out with the Giga Chad bull. This is good. Now when it comes to the investors and the community, which is a big part of the story, of course, it has been definitely tough to kind of get that through their heads that GameStop simply made a mistake with all the altcoins. And a lot of them are still stuck in thinking that we need to make Ethereum work. Like there was such a story around this marketplace that it was going to be the best thing ever. And it's hard to pull them out of it, which is why I have definitely, tweeted aggressively at Ryan Cohen, who is like the main guy here, saying like, you need to like explicitly say to these shareholders that have trusted you so much that this was a mistake. The NFTs, all these altcoin partnerships that you were paying money to, they were all simply a failure. You need to come out and tell them that. And he's a really quiet guy. He doesn't share much at all, which is, part of his vibe. I get it. But so many people are still confused about this. And in a movement that is so, such a core of it is like the investors, they're still lost right now, because now they're thinking like, oh, like what's going on? Most of them have, as they went through that shitcoin path, they were dragged through with Ryan Cohen. They went into all of these different altcoin narratives, which at this point, and I was talking about this on a space yesterday, I feel like maybe 5 years ago, crypto was a decent stepping stone into Bitcoin, like it was for me. I definitely spent more time there than I like to admit, but it helped me understand Bitcoin ultimately. But I think now in 2025, I feel like crypto is completely anti-Bitcoin. Like we literally have these crypto CEOs like shelling out money, like shilling to Trump that they should, he should buy their shitcoin instead of Bitcoin. Like they are completely trying to undercut Bitcoin and say like, we're better than this. So I think it's just like purely anti-Bitcoin. So a lot of these people absorb those messages, and now they're a reflection of that. When you post, what's an example? After Ryan Cohen posted a picture of Michael Saylor, it's out there on Reddit and it's blowing up. Everyone's saying, "Oh, what's going on? This is crazy." I started sharing like content from Michael Saylor for people to like get to know this guy, and I posted the his What Is Money show series with Robert Breedlove, which I think is like a good overview of just how ridiculously large this guy's brain is. And everyone's like, "Oh no, he's a scammer. He's a Bitcoin guy. He's whatever." Like it's all negative because they were all fed that information by the crypto machine.
Right.
So it's going to be tough to pull them out of that. But what is going to work and help them see the light is if we get an
Ryan
official
Cohen.
announcement, which as of this recording, we have not seen any official announcement. It's only been a picture of Ryan Cohen and Michael Saylor. If we see an announcement that Ryan Cohen and GameStop have bought Bitcoin officially, and the mother of all short squeezes, we call MOAS, begins, that will quickly snap people out of their stupors. And they will love Bitcoin. I guarantee it, because we've been waiting for this for 4 fucking years. It's like, that's what people are waiting for. They're waiting for this mega short squeeze. And up until this point, the can's been kicked all over the place by these hedge funds within this fiat system that have all these games they can play. And once we have the hardness of Bitcoin enter the GameStop equation, it'll give them that invincibility shield they need to shed off all the nonsense of the shorting and the FTD's failures to deliver and just all these games that the fiat market plays. And that is a big reason why I still hold on now, even after understanding Bitcoin like I do. So like back in, like I said, 2022 is really, I would say that's the year where I completely solidified no more crypto. I'm Bitcoin only. Bitcoin is the future. That's the long-term play. That is the end game. The reason why I'm still holding on to my GameStop, I even bought some more last year. Like I'm still accumulating this thing because I know that once they figure out Bitcoin and implement that into the company, it's going to pop this thing off. And I do believe that in the MOAS thesis, the mother of all short squeezes, is going to be a ridiculous, upswing in a stock and make people ridiculous amounts of money.
Right.
And
Sure.
I will be buying a lot of Bitcoin with that money if this plan works out. So that's sort of why I'm holding on.
Yeah. And I think do like the GameStop people, the investors, do they understand kind of the strategy, the Bitcoin strategy itself, like the treasury strategy of, you are first off, GameStop has, I believe it's $4.6 billion in cash on hand. And then
big ones, baby. They've got money.
Yeah. And then looking at it from a perspective of debt, the debt number that I was able to find was like $24 million in debt. So their asset to debt ratio is just...
No, they have no debt. GameStop doesn't have any debt.
Yeah. Okay. So their debt ratio is crazy because, I mean, when you look at it, just like from the perspective of like an average debt for a company on S&P, NASDAQ, whatever it is, it's something like they hover around like an asset to debt ratio of like 1.6 to 2. Like 2 would be considered good. So you'd have like, $100 million in assets and $50 million in debt. But this asset to debt ratio is wild. So that, to me, makes it possible for them to, do those convertible bond offering type things that MicroStrategy does. But I see that as something that they would do down the line, because at first, all you have to do is just put that cash somewhere, or it's cash or cash equivalents. I can't imagine that they're just sitting in the US dollar because that's depreciating currently over time with inflation. So they're probably just in some type of US Treasury or something like, I don't know what the cash equivalents are. But
I know in the beginning when we first started off, you said something like you thought this is their only viable option.
Right. Because I mean, looking at it, I don't know exactly how GameStop currently generates revenue, but I got the kind of the numbers for 2024 of GameStop's revenue. In Q1 of 2024 was 0.88 billion. Q2 was 0.8 billion. Q3 was 0.8 billion. Q4 was 1 billion. So it's around like $3 billion in revenue in 2024. I'm not sure if that's like directly from their physical stores and selling of video games and consoles, or if it's, partially from their asset. They're holding US Treasuries, making a yield with US Treasuries. I don't think the digital collectibles and NFTs are generating anything for them anymore.
Well,
So
NFTs are dead.
yeah,
Yes.
so they're basically just sitting on a pile of cash. They're a company that doesn't really do anything or generate a revenue stream truly from their original source of
They
revenue.
are profitable though.
That,
So
yeah.
Sounds
So
like MicroStrategy.
right, exactly. It's the exact same situation that MicroStrategy was in. And Michael Saylor talks about this too, right? Like he says, like, we were basically, I don't know if he used the word zombie company, but we're just a company that's going to hold cash, and we're probably going to, over 10, 20 years, that cash is just going to dwindle away because with inflation and everything that's going on, what do we need to do? We need to find something. And that's how he found Bitcoin. So from him, I mean, they initially just started buying it, right? Just they had cash on hand, so they made those initial purchases. And then through that, they've offered, a number of different things with the at the market share offerings, convertible bonds, now the preferred stock that they're using. So I see this as really, the same thing with GameStop. Where else can they go but Bitcoin? So do any of the shareholders, do they really understand like how MicroStrategy has implemented this Bitcoin treasury? Or is that even something that's being talked about, or they're not in the know on it?
the short answer is no. They don't really understand the strategy now as it's changed its name.
Right.
Now myself and some other there's a very small club of people in my same boat of like understanding Bitcoin and GameStop at the same time. We have like little group chats everywhere, and we are trying to push this into that community's knowledge so they understand it. And a name I want to throw at you guys and recommend to reach out to for more of this, the number crunching side of it, like you're talking about, and just the strategy itself, how it would be implemented, how it would look, is my friend Peruvian Bull. Not sure if you know him, Peruvian_Bull. And I could reach out to him and have him, make sure that you guys can get in touch with him if you want to do that side. That's not really my expertise, like the number side, but yes, this, they've been, like as Michael Saylor says, last June 2024 is when I believe they did their last ATM, and they have that's when they had 4.6 billion in cash. And here we are in February. What's that, like 9-10 months later, something like that? They haven't done anything with it. I've just been like yelling from the rooftops, like, this is the perfect time to buy Bitcoin. And what all the people on all the apes on Reddit, the investors, they don't, since they were turned off of Bitcoin through the crypto indoctrination, I would call it, they are all thinking, oh, we should do a acquisition for this, like M&A of some sort. And I just don't think that I mean, I think that the Bitcoin should be the first thing to do, at least put a big portion of that in there, because we have $4.6 billion, it's a massive amount of money that they could do. And we could instantly make a huge splash on the global leaderboards of corporate Bitcoin holders. It just seems like such a no-brainer to me. And no-brainer.
So from kind of the feasibility of actually being able to implement this, kind of looking at the voting power of the shareholders, I saw like the top 10 shareholders of GameStop, RC Ventures. I think they hold something like 8 or 9% of the shares. So they got 8 or 9% of the voting power. And then breaking it down, there's a decent amount of like institutional investors. So Vanguard is the second largest with 25 million shares. BlackRock has 22 million. State Street has 8 million. And I think public companies and individual investors represent around 50% of the remaining shares of GameStop. So this kind of comes in like, I think they would, to be able to implement this, I would assume that they would need a shareholder agreement to be able to, I don't know if it's purchase Bitcoin or they have complete control over how they utilize the $4 billion. Do you know any information on that? Like how they would actually be able to put this structure in place or to actually adopt a Bitcoin strategy?
I don't think they would need the shareholder approval, because so just recently, I can't remember the exact date, but Ryan Cohen put all of his shares, he actually moved them from RC Ventures into his own name. So he has complete control over them. And there's also a point last year where and again, I'm pretty rusty at how all these like regulatory things even work. So I just know the general idea.
Yeah, for
Um,
sure.
Ryan Cohen was given the power by the board to basically do whatever he wants with all the money. So he has a lot of power essentially to do what he wants with it. And that's why I really focus a lot of energy on like if we can just wake him up and get him into
Mhm.
Bitcoin, then it's game over. It's done.
Have you put into thought of the size? So if first off, like MicroStrategy, they have kind of a big CEO, a big name in Saylor that has a lot of power, as you're saying. Have you thought about any in terms of the size they should purchase? For example, they have this 4.5 billion. Should they go 4.5 billion up front? Should they do small purchases? Should they do a little bit, let it grow, do some debt offering after that? Have you thought about that at all?
Oh, I've certainly thought about this. I've had a lot of time to think about this. And my answer is clearly YOLO the whole freaking thing. But of course, who knows what their strategies on the inside. They'd probably do something a little bit safer than that. Who knows? Safe, quote unquote, as
Yeah.
they would what they would consider safe. I think it would be the safest thing to just put it all in Bitcoin. And then you can figure out what to do afterward because I mean, throwing 4.6 billion into Bitcoin would just blow everything up like on all sides. It would,
Yeah.
we would see God candles everywhere in all the right
And
places.
yeah, and especially
What
with no debt, like they don't have to worry about the price going down. Like it
what I
really
would
doesn't
say though
matter.
is public perception though. So
Right.
again, we've been talking about Wall Street bets and GME stockholders, and do they really want them to throw 4.5 billion over $100,000 Bitcoin? Do they understand that it's just like any kind of person first dipping their toes into Bitcoin? They think it's expensive. So you kind of have to, in my mind, it might be just buy a little bit at a time, see that it can go up, and then kind of how Saylor did. He didn't go all in at first.
Yeah. I mean, since this thing began, they were, so the GameStop company has always been doing things as they want to. They've never really been consulting the investor community, at least not retail.
Yeah.
They aren't like Ryan Cohen's not the type of CEO that goes out and says, "Oh, should we do this or do this?" Putting out votes on Twitter like people like Elon have done sometimes. He doesn't talk to people really. I'm sure he listens. It's not like he doesn't care about what people think, but they just take actions and they don't really. Uh, it's not really a two-way street in terms of like what decisions are made. So if they want to do it, they could just do it. And I think that the first reaction, if they were to do a full 4.6 billion YOLO, would be a lot of fear and like, oh my gosh, I can't believe we did that. Like people would freak out for a while. And then in 1 week, when we're at $1 bazillion dollars per share, then they'd be fine with it.
Yeah, that's
Right.
kind of like how I would see it too, is they're really they're going to gauge this based on how the stock reacts to it, right? And even if you don't pull in, say, the retail investors that are already invested in GameStop don't like just straight YOLO all their money into it, then I think you're going to pull in the people that are investing in like MicroStrategy. You're going to pull in other people in the stock market and bring yield in that way, which is going to drive the price up. And then you're probably going to get that on top of that, the flywheel effect of the short squeeze that'll probably come in. And then those people, at the end of the day, they'll just end up being happy. And then it's going to force their hand to learn about Bitcoin itself. It's kind of like I said at the beginning before we started recording, like with MicroStrategy, he's forcing the hand of TradFi. You know, he got himself into a position where he's getting passive liquidity from the NASDAQ and QQQ. Like it's crazy that he's just forced, everyone that invests in 401ks around the world and doing passive investment, he's getting that flow and forcing their money into Bitcoin. And on this side, I feel like GameStop is the paramount meme coin in a way, so that's where we're at with everything on the outside of Bitcoin, is that we're kind of just investing in meme coins, right? So now you're driving all that meme coin energy into Bitcoin itself. It's that meme of where you have Bitcoin at the center with as the star just sucking in all the matter into it. And I feel like this is kind of the second part of that equation of bringing in retail and forcing kind of the normie hand into learning about Bitcoin.
Yeah, and this is one of the frameworks that I've been trying to like share with both of these, the Bitcoin community and the GameStop community, because it's really funny to be in both of them at once because they both think the other ones are stupid.
Yeah.
But yeah, basically, we've all seen the meme in Bitcoin land of how Bitcoin is the singularity where the black hole just sucks everything into it in the world. And I think GameStop is that for the TradFi world. I think GameStop is this black hole in the TradFi world that's just waiting for a spark, and it's going to suck everything up. But it's at a lower level of the Bitcoin one, of course, because Bitcoin is like all global money. You can't get any bigger than that. So this is why I choose to still hold on to some Bitcoin or to some GameStop stock, because if you're able to get a piece of both of those pies, then that's like the kingmaker play. If you can hold on to that GME while that squeezes, I think that that's going to be just like ludicrous straight up handle once things materialize. If you can then move that into Bitcoin and follow the Bitcoin squeeze of everything, you're rich forever. Like, you're set. And and I love that exactly how you framed it there, how MicroStrategy or strategy.
I know. I just
just changed it a week ago.
MicroStrategy.
I'm still too stuck on MicroStrategy. They are forcing the TradFi hand by buying Bitcoin. And you also said before we started recording how GME implementing a Bitcoin strategy would force the shitcoiner hands into Bitcoin. And I think that that's what they need, honestly, because these people, the investors in GME, originally in the beginning, back in like the January 2021 days, everyone really was just looking for the mega squeeze. That's the reason why people were in it. And over the last several years that we've had to wait, because this has been a much longer waiting game than anybody wanted, a lot of people have sort of shifted into that mindset of like really caring about the company itself and wanting, being a long-term shareholder. And I'm not saying that's bad. It'd be awesome if the company succeeds. That's great. And, that's a good thing. And watching them like become better, it's a good story to see this company succeed and beat the shorts long-term for sure. But ultimately, I think at their core, they're still looking for that number go up. Right. And if Bitcoin helps them do that, which, as we know, I mean, look at all these other stocks that have done it. MetaPlanet as well. I mean, they're like one of the highest performing stocks of the year, right?
I think they were the highest performing stock of the year.
Exactly.
In 2024. I looked at it. I pulled the number. It was, they went up 2,629% in 2024.
And that's not including any of these other reasons why the GameStop stock is such a idiosyncratic risk, as it's called, to the system, because it has such a disgusting amount of shorts piled into it. And I didn't fully clarify this earlier, but I completely believe it. And I have also a blog post on my website for anyone who wants to look at benwehrman.com on my blog, where I basically break down the entire GameStop story. I 100% believe that the 2021 run-up was not a squeeze. That was literally zero shorts closed during that time. And the SEC actually put out reports that showed, that was all just retail buying was what pushed that up. It was like, I mean, it was a global phenomenon. People were buying it everywhere. But they have an actual graph in their report that they made about the whole situation. Zero of that price action was from shorts closing. They never closed. And they were at like 226% short, which is ridiculous.
Mm-hmm.
When Tesla had their short squeeze back in, what was it, 2020? Something like that. I can't remember exactly what it was. They had like a huge, long short squeeze, which I was a part of. That was my first stock I ever bought, was Tesla. So that was fun. Made a lot of money on that. It was only like 20% short interest. So this thing is literally more than 10 times that short interest. And since then, we have seen absolutely nonstop for 4 years how much they're continuing to just throw shorts at this thing over and over and over. You can look at the buy logs on Fidelity, and it like every single day there's more buys than sells. Buys, like it's mostly buys every single day, but those get routed into the dark pool, so they don't actually show up on a tape. And the shorts just continue like borrowing more shares. So they've just dug an enormous hole And this is all because of the fiat fuckery that's allowed, and so the question is like, man, this thing is like an absolute nuclear bomb. If even a smidge of like real math were allowed to happen by these fiat powers that be within this market, then we're all going to be rich overnight. We're going to be filthy rich because the math is just stupid. And Bitcoin could be the key to finally unlocking that. And just last night, so yesterday, all over Reddit, the super strong subreddit I told you about, people are posting pictures of their brokers, giving them notifications of these like super high price notifications hitting, like $1,000, $10,000, $40,000. They're getting these notifications that GME has reached this price, and so like these are like stupidly high numbers, and people in all sorts of different apps this is showing up. So like they, of course, these brokers will say, "Oh, it was a glitch, sorry," but it's happening everywhere all the time. So it's like these are like the little peaks of reality, perhaps coming through, and it's just, it's madness. That's all I can say. Bitcoin is going to help us actually make that real.
Yeah, that's compelling. Just the match.
I'm telling all the Bitcoiners out there, like I'm not going to try to convince you to sell any of your Bitcoin. Don't sell your Bitcoin for this thing. Bitcoin is the end game. We know this. But if you have any schmeckles just sitting there in your old stockbroker's account from years ago that you haven't touched, throw them on GME. See what happens.
And the ethos is there, which is also a compelling part of this is GME stockholders are against the TradFi system. They are against the fiat fuckery, as you mentioned. They, in theory, should be Bitcoiners. So the story is, it is there if they decide to go that route.
Yeah, totally. And I would say that most of the subreddits, like research that's been done, when you kind of look at what people are posting and getting a feel for the zeitgeist, it's quite focused on the markets, the stock market. So it's kind of within that bubble. And there are certain people like my friend I mentioned earlier, Peruvian Bull. He's done excellent work, putting out lots and lots of written content, doing podcasts, making videos on trying to like show these people like here's a bigger picture of the dollar and how Bitcoin fixes everything, and the central banks, moving outside of our little bubble of the stock market. I think that's really important because, like you said, like these people are really good people. They're really smart, but they just haven't quite zoomed out far enough to see the big game at play and how the reason why there's so much nonsense happening in the stock market is because of fiat money. And so we need to put some resources and money, and perhaps $4.6 billion worth, into the solution to the bigger problem that's outside is allowing the stock market to be so screwy. So that's why it's so exciting that Bitcoin is now entering the picture, and why it's just all about education right now, just helping those people like figure out this is why we care so much about this. This is going to help us all win.
Yeah, I agree. So I think maybe if you had to just give like a short pitch to just, GME holders, why should they do this? Why is this good for them?
Why should we buy Bitcoin and like the company buy Bitcoin?
Kind of just like, summarizing everything we've kind of talked about, just like hit them with that short presentation. Like, this is why we need to do it. Why do we need to do this now?
Yeah, I mean, I think that the gist of it is we have seen over the last 4+ years now how there's just so much wiggle room and corruption and able to cheat the system to prevent the little guy from winning within this system. And that's because we are within one of the fiat arms of the system, which is completely controlled by the bad guys. Like they have it completely rigged, and everyone in there knows that. But what they don't fully know is that making really detailed, amazing Reddit posts about how corrupt everything is isn't going to solve the problem, because at the end of the day, you have to just rip the heart out of the beast. And that's why we need Bitcoin, because Bitcoin is that hard money that rips the heart out of the fiat currency beast. is the first ever like perfectly transparent, scarce asset that can't be played with in these ways. It can't be printed, because both of those different levels we talked about, the stock market level and the central banking level above it. The root of the problem is that some people can print things that other people can't. In the stock market, you can print shares. They can, borrow fake shares. They can kick FTDs that the failures should deliver forever. It's all just, made up fairy tales, and so the people within that system, like, we played by the rules and it's still not working. That's because the people on the other side of the trade can continue making up these fairy tales. And I should quickly say, though, it's not like this is only a purely David versus Goliath story. There are some big money players now on the long side of GME as well. So that's another thing for people to keep in mind if they think this is like only retail versus Wall Street. Like, no, there are big players waking up, realizing that the sharks on the short side are going to get eaten up. So the sharks are piling up on the long side as well. So another reason to, have some bullishness for what could happen in the future. It's not black and white like that. But anyways, I was saying Bitcoin fixes the higher layer of why they're able to do that in the first place, which is all comes down to the money. And if money can no longer be printed, then that trickles down into all the parts of the financial system, one of them being the stock market. And they can no longer print shares and continue to play these games. And at last, we will see the curtain pulled away and the reality laid bare, which is going to be spectacular. And, of course, if you were to pin me down and ask me, am I more confident in Bitcoin or GameStop thesis? Of course, I'm going to say Bitcoin. This is like the mother of all like assets in the universe right now. This is like generational, world-changing wealth, basically guaranteed. Like, it's the closest thing to guaranteed we have. And as the Bitcoiners always call me an idiot for, like, yes, the GameStop is within the fiat system, but when Bitcoin gets infused into the GameStop, I see this being the grand finale of the fiat stock market for me personally. Like, there could be a future where Bitcoin like fixes the stock market and it actually works the way it should. And then all of a sudden we can have like real investing again, where,
right, it drives values
we don't have to just throw our money into mutual funds just to not, starve from inflation. I think that's stupid. Like, all Bitcoiners agree with this. Like, it's going to definancialize things in a way that maybe in the future, like, investing will actually work properly. That'd be cool.
Yeah.
But for now, at least in the current paradigm, I see this as the grand finale of the corrupt version, where once the numbers are actually exposed behind GME and it is, ripped out of that corrupt system and reality is shown, then it's going to be a ridiculous opportunity to make a ton of money. And for the Bitcoiners out there, like, yes, you can buy. I'm trying to buy more Bitcoin than Saylor after this Moas baby. Let's go. And then after that, all these people will have a much better view of Bitcoin, of course, because it helped them get out of that problem. And then we'll have millions of new Bitcoiners made out of this. It'll be a win for everybody. And that's why I keep pushing it. I'm super bullish on it.
Yeah, I mean, I think your point there too with kind of how they can play those fiat games, print monies, print stocks, things like that. It's like, if GameStop takes the Bitcoin strategy and adopts the Bitcoin strategy, it allows them to play those fiat games, but then also store that in something that you can't play the fiat games with. So
let me also mention real quick that some of the shitcoin stuff GameStop did was around like a GameStop wallet, where they had like their Ethereum, basically a MetaMask type of thing that people could use. And so what I was saying during that now is, you could have a GameStop Bitcoin wallet. You could make a GameStop like version of a cold card. You could have like cold storage. They could have all this stuff in their stores. This could be a product they could sell. And so they've already sort of done that just with shitcoin. So like, just make it with Bitcoin, and all of a sudden, like, you have all these. You could like start giving out Bitcoin dividends to your shareholders with all the Bitcoin you put on your balance sheet. It just opens up all these possibilities for really turning your shareholder base into like future Bitcoiners that love you for, helping improve their financial situation massively, changing their life, and getting them onboarded to the future of money, which is Bitcoin. And this is why something as simple as a picture of Ryan Cohen and Michael Saylor together gets me so excited.
Yeah, no, that's a really interesting point too. It's kind of the fact that they have retail stores and they can sell things. You're bringing in that first mover effect, kind of like how Peter McCormick does it with his soccer team, and how the bars have done it with the bar in New York. Like the first mover effect, being able to bring in the large retail group that is Bitcoiners that will now kind of like always have your back forever. It brings
MicroStrategy didn't have that, by the way. They didn't have this crazy, giant, rabid investor base. Like this will be a first. This is a pioneer.
GME has a head start in that. Yeah.
Yeah, that's crazy. Yep, that's another good point, another revenue stream possibility for them. I think at the end of this, it's like, again, as we know, I think this is the only way forward for them. I think if he's talking to Saylor and posting a picture with Saylor, I mean, that has to be a signal, right? That's got to be some kind of signal.
Like I said earlier, he's a man of few words. He doesn't post things without it meaning something, which is why I'm very optimistic. And I feel like I would slightly disagree with you on saying it's like the only thing they can do. Like they are profitable. They could probably get creative. True. I mean, Ryan Cohen has had success in the past. He built up Chewy into a super successful company. He's a young billionaire. He's a really sharp, smart guy. So I'm not saying he wouldn't find some other way to find success here, but I think that Bitcoin is like the invincibility star, super booster, rocket ship all rolled into one. It's just it's the best option there is by far.
Gotcha.
Now, I know we kind of gone down the whole GME route here. You laid out a good case here on why you're bullish, and I think it makes perfect sense. Do you have any thoughts on just Bitcoin in general for the year and where you see things playing out?
I never do price predictions. I just think that it could do anything, but I really think that every single year that goes by, it just becomes more and more. My conviction grows that like this thing is just going to continue going up forever. Like we're getting closer and closer to the real game theory catalysts where we start seeing, the corporations start, gobbling it up, and it just takes off like dominoes. And same thing at the nation state level, and I think like most Bitcoiners, I've been surprised it's taken this long. I can't believe that, after Michael Saylor, there weren't, I thought that would have been the kickoff moment.
Yeah.
And same with El Salvador being the kickoff moment for the countries. We haven't really seen that yet, but every single year that there's just more and more conviction building globally, more people are aware of it. More people are understanding the value there. And while so many of these entities are just kind of scared to make that leap, it seems like they're all like the tension is building among all of them. Like they're all getting closer to the edge. And I've watched this with Ryan Cohen as he's getting closer and closer to the edge. He's posting Mises quotes and libertarian stuff. So like he's definitely in that headspace, but he just hasn't been able to quite pull the trigger on it. And there's so many other, just massive, rich entities out there that are in that same boat. And I think that it's just, it's the calm before the storm right now. And I think that absolutely, like we could just have everything blow up in the next week and hit $1 million a coin by the end of the year. It's possible. Like there's nothing stopping it. There's no like leash on Bitcoin. It's completely free to actually move with supply and demand. So as Michael Saylor said, like as soon as like, I can't remember the exact quote, but as soon as like, a handful of billionaires buy this thing, every single model is broken and we're just off to the races. And it's going to be spectacular, perhaps ugly. I know there's other people in the Bitcoin world like Jeff Booth who doesn't respect that guy a ton, who talks about, how, there is a way that we could do a smooth transition that doesn't just explode everything everywhere and make all the Bitcoiners super rich, but the world goes to shit. That's not what we want. And this is why it's always, I love how these conversations are happening about what is the best way to transition into the Bitcoin standard, causing the least amount of havoc and the least amount of downturn. Well, I do think it's inevitable to have some, and this is what a lot of people outside of Bitcoin don't really understand. I talk to my own friends and family about this, and they're saying like, oh, but it's going to be so bad for all the people that don't have Bitcoin. What about the people that don't have Bitcoin? And I mean, the fiat system has put them in this situation where they're so screwed already. We have to eventually rip this Band-Aid off. Or, I mean, the alternative is that it just keeps getting worse forever. Like in order to fix the problem, we have to rip the Band-Aid off of fiat. It's going to get ugly for certain people. We have to do our best to help everyone. Like the best possible solution is that we help everyone up and we all sing Kumbaya together, and everyone gradually gets rich and happy, and the whole world becomes deflationary. But it's just tough to see a reality where that happens. All we can do is do our best, try to build strong communities and a strong network. And also I'm super bullish on things like Nostr, because that enables completely free communication among everyone. So we can really make sure that this wealth that we gain from this, both on the GME side after MOAS and for Bitcoin and hyper-Bitcoinization, these are two events that are going to put a lot of money in the hands of these people that held strong and were convicted in this thing. So we need to be thinking, how are we going to make sure that we don't get sucked into the meme of just buying Lambos every day and just drinking champagne until we die, and really using this power that we gain responsibly to create a better world, a better future.
For sure. Yeah. I mean, we want to get as many people on the lifeboat as we can. We obviously, all three of us think Bitcoin is that lifeboat. There's obviously going to be winners. There's going to be losers. Not everyone's going to get on that lifeboat.
But eventually, long enough term, it will force deflation, which will help everybody. So long term, it is going to help everybody.
Exactly.
But that transition is going to be the chaotic part.
Yeah, that ripping the Band-Aid off part is going to be, a little pain that we're going to have to go through. But at the end of the day, if we get into a hard money standard, then we can put an end to this, insidious inflation that just erodes our time and our value. And that's the goal. That's why we have these conversations. Yeah. So it was nice having you on. You got any other things that you want to talk on GameStop or,
I think that's all the main highlights right there.
Yeah.
I'm really looking forward to being vindicated on both fronts. I think that we're getting closer to that day. I've been waiting for this for a long time.
Yeah, man.
And just like Bitcoin, no one knows when things are going to actually pop off, but it's just a patience game. And I'm feeling really confident that both of these plays are going to win. So if you're on either of them, you're in great shape. I choose to be on both of them because I think that by playing both of them strategically, ending with Bitcoin, that is the way that you're going to see a huge change in your life relatively quickly. So that's what I'm holding on to, and we'll continue monitoring.
Cool, man. Yeah. Let us know where we can find you, and I think we'll wrap it up here.
Sure, man. Yeah, I'm like I mentioned earlier, I'm huge on Nostr. I love Nostr. I think it's definitely up there with Bitcoin in terms of how much it's going to change the world. So you can do primal.net/Ben. Just find me at Ben Wehrman there. I have a website, benwehrman.com, where I have my blog, my podcast, all of that. The Ben Wehrman podcast is my own podcast where I talk about all kinds of crazy stuff. We go into Bitcoin, health and diet, and all kinds of fun conspiracy theories. That's sort of my main focus right now, is building that thing out. So tons of fun stuff going on, and I'll be on all those places.
Awesome.
And Twitter.
Thank you so much.
Elon, I call Twitter Elon app at this point. It's just, it's where the most conversation is, but I mostly use it now to pump Nostr on there.
Nice. Yeah, it's the same thing with MicroStrategy now, trying to call it strategy. Can never call it X. It's always hard.
Thanks a lot, Ben. This was fun.
Yeah, thanks for having me, boys. This is great. Talk to you later.